Hey guys, welcome to my channel and thank you for clicking on this video. I hope you guys are not sick. I wish you all good health and happiness. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy new year. This video is going to be about the great debate about shielding patients. So there has been much research into this subject and a new school of thought has been cropping up lately. The way that lead shields are supposed to work is that they are placed between the patient and the x-ray beam and are intended to absorb any x-rays that are not necessary in forming the image, mainly scatter radiation. And scatter radiation is radiation that spreads out in different directions from the original radiation beam when the beam interacts with a substance. It is less energetic than the original beam, but it leads to unnecessary patient dose. Absorbing the scatter should, in theory, lead to decreasing the patient's dose. However, in practice, this is not usually what happens. First of all, lead shields are extremely heavy, cumbersome, and uncomfortably hot if you have to wear the shield all day or for a long period of time. Lead is literally a heavy metal with an atomic number of 82, making it extremely dense. This is what makes it an excellent shield because it is able to absorb the x-rays instead of letting the x-rays pass through and expose a patient behind the shield. However, this also makes it very difficult to use effectively. If you have ever had to wear a lead shield, you know that they are extremely heavy. Lead shields are measured in thickness. The thicker the layer of lead is in the shield, the better it is at absorbing the x-rays, but the heavier the shield becomes. Lead shields can be anywhere from 0.25 to 1 millimeters thick. An apron with 0.5 millimeters thick lead can attenuate or absorb approximately 90% or more of the scatter radiation. Lead glasses with 0.5 to 0.75 millimeter thick lead can reduce more than 95% of scatter radiation. Lead shields do not totally absorb all of the radiation. Radiation doses used in diagnostic imaging are not associated with measurable harm to the gonads or a developing fetus. So this is partially because nowadays the technology has advanced so much that the radiation dose that you get from getting x-rays nowadays is way smaller than the radiation you would have gotten like 50 years ago. Now we do digital x-rays instead of film. And digital x-rays, you can lower the dose a lot more than you would have with the film. And so basically you don't get as much radiation anyways. One of the main reasons why people are arguing that shielding is kind of pointless for a patient is because shielding is ineffective in reducing internal scatter, which is a secondary radiation that spreads out in different directions from the x-ray beam when it interacts with your body, and the scatter happens internally, so there's no way of putting a shield like inside of you to protect you from that internal scatter. So an external shield just sitting on top of you is not going to help reduce that internal scatter. So a doctor, Dr. Pahad from Yale Medicine, says when a radiation beam reaches your organs, it breaks apart and bounces around a little. So a lot of radiation exposure is from inside the body, and the external shields can't prevent that from happening. But this type of radiation comes with getting an x-ray and is so low that we don't get concerned. So if you guys are worried about like radiation exposure, I made a video kind of describing how much radiation you actually get. And the crazy thing is that you actually get exposed to a lot of radiation just in everyday life, like going on an airplane, just breathing air. You get a lot of radiation exposure anyways. So x-rays, there's not that much, and you're getting valuable diagnostic information. Shielding may also compromise the exam, requiring retakes, since it could get in the way of important anatomy and cause artifacts. And just in case you didn't know, artifacts are anything in the x-ray picture that should not be there and can like kind of mess up, can kind of get in the way and make it hard for the radiologist to be able to diagnose anything in the image. And if you have an artifact in the image, you have to retake. So that's basically doubling your dose when you could have just taken one dose, you know? The dose from repeating the x-ray is usually greater than exposure from not shielding. One thing that I don't think many people think about is how germy lead shields are. So, when I was a student at the hospital, I know for a fact we never really disinfected the lead shields. The only times we would was when there was like a slow part of the day and there was nothing else to do. So like as a student, you had to like keep yourself busy doing something. So we would like, you know, take the time to actually disinfect all the shields. And that happened like every couple of months or so. Honestly, this was like before the pandemic, so I never thought about them as being dirty. I do remember there was one tech that I was working with who was like really, really anal about like whenever she'd wear like any kind of like thyroid shield, she'd put like a washcloth in between the thyroid shield and herself. And I always thought that was kind of like overreacting, like there's not that many germs, you know? But then I started realizing, yeah, maybe that's gonna give me some like, you know, acne or whatever, so I started doing that too. Now that I have lived through a global pandemic, I definitely am really, really anal about like disinfecting my shields. Like after every single patient, even if they're not really sick, I make sure to like wipe them down at least. I read an article, they interviewed a bunch of x-ray techs to see if anybody actually disinfected or what they did to disinfect or how many times they disinfected, and it was kind of gross. I will leave a link of that article in the description down below and you guys can read it. Basically the article talks about the fact that there is a biofilm on lead shields that are about 10 to 1,000 times more resistant to antibiotics than standalone bacteria. And so just so you know, like biofilm is basically like a community of bacteria that like lives together and they survive better together than on their own. If that grosses you out, just make sure that whenever you go to a medical facility during a pandemic or even after a pandemic, to disinfect everything and do your laundry anytime you like touch any type of thing in a medical facility. About a week ago or so, there was a really, really sick little kid. I felt so bad for him. He came, he kept like urinating, frequent urination, and we found out later that his blood sugar was like through the roof. But yeah, I had to x-ray him. I wasn't aware that he had peed himself, and I put a shield on him, and once I did, I could feel that it was wet. So after I x-rayed him, I tried to disinfect really, really good. I tried to really, really wipe down the shield, but it's really crazy because ever since I got COVID, my sense of smell has been really, really weird. I'm super sensitive to certain smells and super not sensitive to certain smells, but for some reason lately, I've been able to smell urine really, really well. And that shield has been smelling like urine, and I don't know if it's just me because my nose is extra sensitive to certain things now, or if it actually does smell like urine. So I have been lately not using that shield. Due to all of these reasons that I was talking about in this video, some hospitals or imaging facilities are actually stopping the use of shielding patients altogether. So in case you were wondering, my facility doesn't have a preference, and I had been shielding whenever possible, because it doesn't really hurt anything. But now that that shield smells like urine, I just haven't been shielding. If patients do like ask me why I'm not shielding or request to be shielded, I still shield them. But I just don't automatically do it every time anymore. And then if a patient does ask for it, I give it to them because I don't feel like totally going into the in-depth reasoning behind shielding or not shielding and talking about all the pros and cons, because that would take forever and who has time for that? So, what do you guys think should be done? Do you guys still think that you should be shielded or not? So, tell me your guys' opinions down below. Tell me if you would prefer to be shielded or not. And thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos like this. Thanks. Bye.